Mr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr. Turner. I want to start by thanking the honourable member for Perth and Kinrossshire for securing this timely and very important debate and his characteristically forceful and measured speech. It's been a fun debate. There's been lots of contributions, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunity coming forward. I just want to draw out just a few particularly powerful contributions. One from the member for South Shropshire, who pointed out the issues about the prevalence of digital exclusion and the use of the Veterans Card. The member for Goole and Pocklington, who rightly pointed out the issues that one login has had. The member for Farnham and Borden, who's pointed out the problem with the prevalence of elderly digital poverty. And the member for Dewsbury and Batley, who always speaks with great wisdom on these debates, and particularly the issue about multiple NHS logins. This plan will make government-issued digital ID compulsory to access work. Ignore the piffle. This is de facto mandatory. And given the contentious history of mandatory ID schemes in this country, one may have expected a policy of such weighty constitutional importance to appear in the government's manifesto. But it was conspicuously absent, like most of current government policy. Earlier this year, I stood across the dispatch box from the previous minister debating the digital verification system brought in by the Data Use and Access Act. That scheme created a trust framework for a register of approved providers of digital identity verification services. Building on the competitive ecosystem established by the last government, are private sector companies already providing the right to rent, right to work and many other identity checks.
Would my honourable friend give way?
Oh, of course.
Thank you. Talk about the difference between the public and the private sector. Would he agree with me that it's deeply concerning that at a time of rising taxation and increasing government debt, this government can't even tell us how much a digital ID scheme would cost?
Yes, good question.
Well, I thank my honourable friend from Bromley and Biggin Hill for his intervention. And the point is, we have a sector which is already developing voluntary ID schemes who are now being let down by the government, who are now bringing in their own mandatory scheme. Not once in the course of previous debates did the Minister mention that the government intended to launch its own mandatory digital ID system for the right to work or otherwise. But the concerns about this policy go beyond questions of democratic legitimacy. The NAO's report on government cyber resilience, published earlier this year, contains a number of concerning findings about serious gaps in cybersecurity amongst government departments and public sector bodies. One of the most concerning is that the Cabinet Office does not have a strategy for how government organisations could become cyber resilient by 2030. There is no current plan to secure the government's cyber resilience over the very same timeframe that this mandatory government-run identity scheme, which will host the data of every working person in the UK, is being rolled out. And we are still yet to hear from the government a clear timescale for bringing its cyber security and resilience bill forwards. Mr. Chair, digital inclusion remains a challenge for many across this country and impacts vulnerable groups such as those with low incomes and those living with disabilities the most. The government's policy of making digital ID mandatory to access work flies in the face of digital inclusion, and the consideration given to the digital exclusion as, well, we're going to consult on what to do as an afterthought is frankly shameful. Digital inclusion was at the heart of the previous government's levelling up ambitions. The government published its own digital inclusion plan in February, which will be implemented over several years. Why not concentrate on putting that plan into effect, rather than diverting resources towards its own costly digital identity programme? Universal digital inclusion and robust cybersecurity must be conditions precedent to any government-run ID scheme. At the moment, we have neither. So, Mr. Turner, we are left with a number of pressing questions. Why was this flagship policy not part of the government's election manifesto this year? Why has it been brought forward now? And why should it be mandatory rather than optional? Why is the government pursuing a costly government-run ID scheme when the private sector infrastructure for digital ID services exists already? What is their plan to keep citizens' data secure? And can he guarantee that no one lawfully eligible to work will be excluded from employment by this scheme? Thank you.